You ready, Karen?
Good, you
I'm
will.
ready. Let's do this.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Toxicology, hosted by Recovery Unplugged. I am your co-host, Jason Cavello, and with me is my esteemed colleague, Joseph Gorordo. Hey,
Hey,
Joseph.
thanks for having me back, Jason.
Oh man, I couldn't do it without you. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you and your
Yeah,
wallpaper.
thank you.
Um, I'm real excited for today's for today's guest and for this conversation that we're about to have today. I do want to, before I introduce her, even though she's on the screen and it says who she is, um, just wanted to take a second to welcome, all our returning viewers and listeners, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else. Please, if it's your first time here, so glad you're here. We love to interact with you guys and have conversations. We want you guys to feel a part of this. We want this show to be a force for good and change in the world. So the more you guys interact, talk with us, like, share, follow, tag your friends, all that good stuff, the more good we're able to do. So thank you for returning viewers and first timers. So today we're going to be having a conversation about parenting in recovery, which is something that I think so many folks deal with, either getting into recovery already being a parent or navigating recovery as first-time parents. And there's so many different scenarios where it comes up. So it's really exciting to have our guest with us today, Karen Winkler. Karen is a parent in recovery who has an amazing story about her recovery, her relationship with her former spouse, and parenting in recovery, and how they navigate those waters. So, Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Welcome on the show.
Thanks, guys. My name is Karen Winkler, and I just appreciate you guys having me here so much. It means a lot. Yes, I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery from alcoholism for 3 years now and 4 months, and I'm also in recovery from an eating disorder. I think that's kind of important. I don't think we always talk about, we were just talking before the show about, we don't always talk about dual diagnoses in the recovery world. So I like to mention both. I'm a mom of 2 boys, almost 15 and 11. And we've been, as a family, kind of navigating this recovery road for a very long time in our family. And it's definitely impacted how our family dynamic works now. And it'd be great to kind of share more with you guys and let you know how it works in my life.
Yeah. So right off the bat, one of our viewers, Candace, says that she's struggling. She is this is her first time, I'm assuming, attempting getting clean and sober, and a mom, and she said she's trying really hard. So Karen, what would you suggest to Candace who is struggling?
Candace, I'm so happy that you're here with us tonight. Being a mom is so overwhelming in itself. I don't know how old your little one is, but I know, especially when they're young and they need everything around the clock, and you're just trying to balance life and care at home, and you just feel so alone sometimes as a young mom trying to do that. The best thing, and I know with COVID, it's been so difficult to kind of get out of your comfort zone, get out of the house and reach out to people. There's so many fantastic meetings that are online via Zoom. There's so many women in these recovery communities that are willing to reach out and help. There's so many moms like myself that have done the same path where you just feel like you're absolutely alone and no one's there, but that we're here. There's a ton of us in these programs. We could probably, I don't know how you guys feel about like attaching a Zoom link or something to show meetings. Do you guys have any links to things that we could?
Oh yeah, we provide all kinds of resources in the comments and the show notes for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. But just know that you're not alone. It's one step at a time, one moment at a time. And if you have friends close by who are sober, please reach out. Don't do it alone. It's just so much easier to have other people close by, other moms who can relate.
And just to echo some of what Karen was saying, you know, parenting alone is such a challenge, right? I mean, you go to the bookstore and there's shelves and shelves of how to parent guides, right? How to parent siblings, how to handle a younger child, how to handle a spirited child, what to do with children, and all these. There's volumes written on the subject because parenting is hard, period. You know, without taking into account anything else like mental health, substance abuse, financial struggles, et cetera, et cetera. And then, but the same is true for alcoholism and addiction, right? There's books and books and books on the subject, and there's research because it's something that's also incredibly challenging. But you hit the nail on the head, right? We don't do any of these things alone, right? Reaching out for support, you know, leaning on family, friends, there's communities, you know. I'm one of those people that still believes that all humans are good at their core and want to do good. So I know that when someone reaches out for help, you know, there's almost always a hand there ready to grab them, whether it be helping with the kids or with the recovery piece, right?
Yeah.
And so what I think is great is people in recovery who actively do work on themselves, whether it's 12-step meetings, whatever you do. It seems like there's this extra set of tools that you have that you apply to every aspect of your life. So, you know, I've been to Joseph's house. I know his family, and you know, he's got a full house. He's got 3 kids varying in age, and you know, I see him doing, you know, these things that I know from the rooms of recovery. And he is like, you know, hey kids, you know, why don't y'all go meditate for a few minutes, and you know, just these things where it's like you see the recovery working in people. So Karen, how has your recovery helped you with your parenting?
I think it's changed me leaps and bounds. And I think I'm to the point in recovery now where my kids can tell when I need a meeting. You know, if I haven't been to one in a little while, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so on edge today. Find a meeting, you know, because they know the difference. When I'm working my program, I'm calmer, I'm more grounded. Things kind of roll off my back. You know, you walk into a meeting and it's instant therapy. You're hearing what other people have to say, and you're getting something that's weighing on you off your you know, off your shoulders, and you come out and you're okay, so now I can handle this. So now the Lego up your nose and the spilled milk on the carpet and, you know, the things that are falling apart don't seem so bad. It kind of puts it all in perspective. And so for me, you know, I relapsed before I started the 3 years. And the biggest reason that happened was I started to put my recovery on the back burner. I let parenting and, you know, daily activities and moves and jobs, and I just kept going, oh, I'll go to a meeting next week, or, oh, you know, that was a meeting, but it just didn't work in my schedule. And the excuses and the mental anguish started way before I picked up my first drink. So I think it's prevalent in my life, and it needs to be. And if my kids were here, they'd be like, yep, it needs to be.
So if you're having an off day, do your kids ever tell you to like call your sponsor or to make a gratitude list or something?
You know, now I think I'm kind of in the flow. We talk a lot about gratitude lists actually in our house, but not as much. But yeah, I definitely got the comment like, Mom, I think you need a meeting, like back in the day. So yeah, all right, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. So, but at the same time, it's such a beautiful thing for my kids to know that helps that much. They know that firsthand, like, okay, the meeting is the cure. So.
And Joseph, what would you say about, you know, parenting and your kids knowing that you're in recovery, right? Do you think that's going to help you when the time comes? Like you have a teenage kid who asks about like experimenting with drugs, or you think maybe that's what's happening. Do you think that gives you a good advantage on it?
I think so. You know, with my kids, you know, I got sober before I had kids, you know, and we didn't necessarily plan to have kids or were ready to have kids when we did, but they're here, right? And I've worked in treatment their whole lives, right? Whether it be in my current role or when I was doing direct counseling and stuff like that. So their awareness has grown as their capacity to process this information has grown, right? So First they just knew, oh, daddy's job is helping people, and then eventually it's like, well, what does daddy help people with? Well, daddy helps people who are sick. You're like, oh, is daddy a doctor? No, it's people who are having like, mental problems or emotional problems. And then it kind of grew to where they knew, they would hear me talk about, things like heroin and alcohol, and hear me having conversations on the phone, to where they understood like, okay, daddy helps people who need recovery, people who have alcohol and drug problems. And then only very recently, in the last 6 months or so, and my kids always knew that I didn't drink, right? Because their mom does, so they knew that I didn't drink. And we would tell them, like, daddy's allergic, or daddy just doesn't drink, or whatever. But my 12-year-old, my oldest boy, really, it's been in the last 6 months that, I had a real frank conversation with him about, hey, like, I struggled with alcohol and drugs. Like, I help people get recovered because I myself am in recovery. And gave him a little bit, not too much gory details, but some specifics, and shared with him like, hey, you're in middle school now, right? Like, your emotions are getting bigger, the way you respond to things is changing, and it's important for you to know that, like, because you're my kid, you very well may have the genetics for something similar, so that's why we're always trying to talk to you about finding healthy ways to do things. He's got a gratitude journal that he's supposed to write in every night. We try to talk about gratefuls over dinner when we can all sit down and have a conversation. And there's so many different ways that my recovery has directly fed into my parenting.
Fantastic. And so, Karen, you co-parent with someone who is also in recovery, right?
Yeah, very much so.
And how does that work out for you?
I think, with any divorced couple, it took us a long time. It took us time. It took us time to both get healthy. It took us time to both heal from old wounds. But we've developed this incredible, this trust and this friendship. If something goes wrong, he's one of the first people I call. He and his partner have become huge friends and confidants in my life. And I think our kids feel that trust and bonding as co-parents. We've kept this really open communication, not only between us, but with the boys, about sobriety and just, if something's going wrong at one house, it's going wrong at the other house. We're trying to match parenting styles and just keep the boys consistent. The boys were, at one point, dad was just a summer vacation dad, but when Drew turned, I think it was 11, we moved here right before he was in the 6th grade. So we live a mile apart now. We're right down the road. So if my car breaks down, I can call them. If something happens, like their water main or something broke one night, they came here and slept. We just are at the point where there's just this respect and just trust between us. And I think that comes from both having past addictions. We went through a long period where we didn't trust each other at all. And I don't know, it's just, we're very lucky, but it all comes from communication and healing for sure. So I think I just went on a tangent, but
no, I love it. Because when you talk about communication, like I think about like recovery communication, right? Like how, I know, like with my wife, right? There'd be times where we, it's like, we'd be mad at each other for something or another, and eventually I'd be like, I did this, and this. My part was this. What can I do to make it right? And she'll be like, my part was this. Even though she's not in recovery, she knows the language. She knows how it works. Like, my part was this and this. And like trying to stay away from you statements and using I statements and all that kind of stuff really plays into it, right? That communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being like, okay, so I need to do this, or I'm feeling overwhelmed. My job's really tough this week. Okay, well, I'll take the kids. There's no battle there because we want the kids to feel that there's no battle there. It's really about them. It's about creating that safe space and that stability and that environment that we always wanted for them when we weren't creating it when they were little. So, yeah.
So Joseph, like on a professional level, do you find it a challenge for, say, a mother who is calling about her partner who is needing help, but not sure if they can go to treatment because of work, and how co-parenting would work in a situation like that?
Well, I mean, sometimes when I'm speaking to clients, there's very often there's excuses for why they can't go to treatment or why they can't commit to a certain length of treatment. And sometimes it's avoidance, it's a lack of willingness, but we live in the real world, and people have to recover in the situations that they're placed in. So sometimes it is a reality that, someone can't go away for 30 days or 45 days or whatever the case may be. What's really cool is that the way treatment and mental health awareness has grown, I'd say over the past decade, the spouse who's not going to treatment understands a little bit more. It's less of like he needs to go to rehab or she needs to go to rehab and I'm mad at them. It's much more about like, my spouse needs help, and we're going to do what we can to support them staying in treatment. Now, if that's not a reality, because of that same boom in awareness and understanding, that means that there's a lot more programs than there used to be. And a lot of programs offer multiple levels of care to where it doesn't have to just be that 30-day rehab, go home anymore, right? There's options like outpatient services. You can kind of mix and match different treatment options to suit somebody's needs, both mental and emotional needs, but also their practical needs. And so I talk to the families about that kind of stuff and let them know that there's options and that there's a willingness from like Recovery Unplugged organizationally to meet them where they're at. And that's not even talking about now we've got with one of the few silver linings that I've seen in the pandemic is that now people are so comfortable with doing things virtually, right? Us having this conversation right now, right? Karen, I don't even know, where are you in the country?
I'm in Ohio. I've lived all over the country, but I'm in Ohio currently. Yeah.
Karen's in Ohio, and I'm in Texas, and we're having a conversation. And we've got people in the chat from Arizona and all over the country. So we can also do groups that way. There's a whole host of online services that are available now.
Our main sponsor, Recovery Unplugged, now offers virtual services. So, if somebody can't get away for 30 days and needs help, there are all these kinds of options that are available to them. And, we just, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and things were just so different back then. It was like shameful if you had to go to rehab, or you had to go to where your parents, were drinking. And now it's just like to be able to say that, like, I'm not okay right now and I need to get some help. It's like, it's so good to see that that's now considered more of a victory than a defeat, to say, like, I'm going to take control of this issue that I have. I have the power to change it, and that's what I'm gonna do. So Maggie says, being a mom in recovery is the coolest, scariest, and most amazing role that she has ever taken on. Do you
awesome.
Agree with that statement, Karen?
Heck yeah, absolutely. Coolest, first most. I think it used to be like, I remember walking into my first meeting and saying the word alcoholic was so terrifying, like just to mark myself. I remember I just cried the entire meeting. But I wear it as a badge now. I'm super proud of being sober. I'm super proud of it. And the coolest part is that when you put it out there, it's amazing the amount of people that come to you saying, I've been questioning my drinking for a while and I really don't know what to do and I don't want to tell anyone, but can you give me some pointers? I've had so many women reach out because everyone's kind of in this, especially as moms, am I not? But they don't want to mark themselves yet. And it can be very scary that way. But I don't know. I think it's a pretty awesome journey. And anyone that puts out there that they're on it is very cool in my eyes. It's awesome. Good for you, Maggie. That is cool.
Yeah, before I ultimately got clean, when I first started going to meetings down in Miami and in South Florida, I went to this one particular meeting, and it was in a really rough area in Miami. And this lady came in just completely strung out, like in no good condition, and came in with 3 kids and was just like, I don't know if I'm in the right place, but I need help. And it was like the meeting immediately just turned into people taking care of this woman, watching the kids. Somebody's holding one of the baby, the other one takes the kid outside, and like you automatically have this village to now help you, and it's like the recovery community, whether you're going into treatment or just going to meetings, like you have all these people, who are there and are just waiting for you to say that you need help.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of curious, and Karen, if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine. It wasn't anything that we talked about ahead of this, but I feel that aside from being in recovery, right, the other thing that's really impacted my parenting the most has been kind of the failures of my parents. No, I shouldn't say parents, but a lot of what I try to do as a dad is to be the things that my dad was not for me growing up. Right? Does that make sense? Did I say that right?
Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
So, like, I'm curious, like, did you grow up with good role models for parenting, or are you like me, kind of doing the opposite?
It's a complex situation. So, in some ways, I grew up in a very good household. My mom was amazing. Throughout the early parts of my childhood. I had an older brother who was special needs, so he took a lot of attention, my parents. And my dad was a businessman who worked really hard. So it was my mom and I were kind of like this core trust relationship. But my mom ended up, my freshman or sophomore year in high school, she got a ruptured disc in her back. And my parents were always, like they drink a lot socially, a lot, but they also worked hard, and they were, wonderful people in many ways. But the ruptured disc started my mom on pills. And my mom went from kind of like the love of my life. She was my other half. And I slowly watched her over the next 3 years dwindle down until we found her after I got home from my freshman year of college. A few weeks after that, she had died from the combination. So it was absolutely life-changing. And the hardest part was we had just convinced her like 3 days before to get help, but my mom was so social and so big in the community and so well revered that she was terrified of taking that mask off and asking for help. She didn't
having people find out, that stigma, right?
Anyone to know. And the only one that really truly saw her falling apart was me, because I would go home to it. And it was devastating. And I really wish, and I don't want to get all emotional, but I really wish she could have asked for help so badly. I mean, she was the most incredible woman, and I just watched her just fade. And it was devastating. And if she could have just asked for help, I'd still have her. So I talked to my kids about that, not in the morbid sense, but that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to admit defeat. It's okay to, take the mask off. You don't have to wear this mask all the time and pretend everything's perfect, because it's not. It's not how life works. So her passing changed my life tremendously. My course in life veered way off for many years. but it also helped me be strong enough to say, I need help. So coming back to what you're saying, I try really hard to show vulnerability with my kids. I think it's really important to do that. Create a safe space for them to talk. And we talk about the good, the fun, but we also talk about the tough stuff, because I think it's so important and healthy in every household to create that trust barrier. If something's happening at school, like my older son came out to us last year, and I've never been so proud of. I was so freaking proud of him for being brave enough to tell me that. But I was so proud of our family because we created that space for him to say, "Mom, I'm gay," and he's like the coolest. He's the coolest kid ever. But so recovery comes into that, and the parenting. My parenting definitely played a huge role in how I parent my kids now.
That's great. Yeah, unfortunately, my father died in active addiction, but he did get to see me clean. So our relationship, he was kind of a stoic man. He was born in Mexico and really, was an immigrant to the States, and really didn't. He was a great, loving father, but we really didn't. It seems like our relationship kind of stayed at that like small child dad relationship. We really didn't get deep into a lot of heavy things, but because he kind of made it seem like I should have learned from his mistakes. You know what I mean? Because he fucked up his life, and then he saw me going down the same path, and then would just get so mad and so frustrated with me. But it was so great. He had gotten cancer, and my girlfriend and I went to Chicago to see him. I would say maybe about 6 months before he passed, and my aunt also met us out there. So we're all going around Chicago, and we go in to go and have lunch somewhere. And my aunt is like, "Mijo, your father dropped this," and hands me a bag, like 2 bundles full of heroin. And I'm like a year and a half, 2 years clean at the time. And I was just like, holy shit, and did not know what to do. But, I thankfully I had those tools, and she's like, "What should I do with it? Should I throw it away?" And I'm just like, no, he's dying of cancer. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make him go and get more. But, we had one conversation a couple weeks before he passed, and he's like, "I'm really, really proud of you." And that was, that meant the world to me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
I didn't know that, Jason. I've never heard you talk about your dad before. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, there it is.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and he was, and my childhood, there was drugs everywhere. My parents were in the music business. We moved from Chicago to Miami just because that's where the trade was, and like I could honestly tell you, like my early childhood was like, it looked like Miami Vice, like the house we lived in, the people that my parents hung out with. And, now that I'm in recovery, I get to see some of my parents' friends, and they get to see me go through it. And they're just like, "Man, the shit that you saw, like, it's no wonder you went through this stuff." But, it's very colorful. But my mom, who I'm sure is watching, is one of my, she is my greatest supporter. And I want to say hi, Mom. I never get to say hi to my mom on here.
Aww.
Hi, Mom. That should make her day.
I think my dad's watching too.
Oh, great. Hi. Is your dad in Ohio as well?
He's actually in Colorado. He and my stepmom live in Colorado. So, yep. Hi, Dad. You're out there. So,
Joseph.
Yep.
Let's talk about some of the struggles that you had in early recovery. Not so much about your parenting, but things that built you into the man you are today and became. Oh, there's my mom saying hi. Hi, Mom. Some of the life. Oh, okay, beautiful. So some of the things that the foundation that you have built now that makes you a stronger parent.
Oh man. Well, I mean, really, I was in early recovery when I found out I was gonna be a dad, Um, I had about 9 months sober when we found out that Chelsea was pregnant. And um I can only describe it as like every emotion simultaneously, you know, like terrified, excited, crying and laughing at the same time. Just it was wild. But you know, recovery at that point had already taught me that the only way that I could face life was on life's terms. So when we found out Chelsea was pregnant, I mean, Chelsea was 19, I was 24, I think. And, uh, you know, having an abortion or putting him up for adoption, while I don't disagree with those for anybody else, for me, we're never going to be okay. And it was like, okay, like, listen, Chelsea, like, if you don't want to do this, like, you don't have to, but please have the child. I'll take him. It's all good. Like, I gave her an out. But that's a big one right off the bat, right? Is it like, this is what life put in my path, and this is, the next step in my journey was my attitude immediately. Um, you know, Beyond that is just, the gratitude stuff is huge. Trying to teach my kids that regardless of what your situation is or where you've been planted, that there's something that you can find to bring some joy into your life, and to learn how to make the best of situations. Um, what other early recovery stuff? I think some of the stuff that we touched on already, right? Like the principles of honesty, the principles of, being vulnerable, admitting to them, when I mess up, which I do on a very frequent basis. The other thing was, prioritizing the recovery. When I first got sober, like, if I worked the graveyard shift, and the only meeting I could hit was at 7 a.m. after working the overnight at Denny's, you're going to the meeting at Denny's smelling like, I mean, at 8 a.m. smelling like syrup. I remember walking to meetings, walking to work, asking for rides. I rode on the back of a dude's motorcycle one time with no helmet just to get to a meeting, because I learned that, if something was important, I was going to find a way to do it no matter what. And teaching my kids that, that idea of prioritizing things that you find important, and being willing to put effort into those things if you want to accomplish them. And with them now, it's about sports. It's about saving money to get a video game and that sort of thing. But it's the same foundational lesson that I learned in early recovery, right? Is if it's important, you prioritize it and it'll happen.
So one of our coworkers, Joseph, Erica M, I'm not going to put her on blast here, but her and I were in treatment together. And to see her from where she started, and now she like got her kids back, and now she's like one of our leaders at work. And it's just, I saw this person, put their recovery first, because like we were in like 2 days apart from each other. So we were in, residential together. We were in IOP together, and just see her put her life together and like put her recovery first. And now she has her kids back and all this stuff. So it really is like, I've heard it called like adult camp. It's like, you know what I mean? You go to treatment, you do all this work on yourself, because, I got clean at 42 and did not know how to do a goddamn thing for myself. I don't have kids. But, at this point, if it came, if it happened, I think that I would be better, more prepared for it than I ever have been in my entire life. I'm not trying to jinx myself or anything here, but, it's just amazing that, what recovery can.
It's not a jinx. It's a blessing. Children are a blessing, Jason.
I'm nearing 50, man. I think it's too old for me to get started, but I appreciate that, and we'll take it in consideration.
Well, I don't know if it's the lighting or the wallpaper, but I thought you were like 26. So.
Oh yeah, Jason's
Something
very
right.
well preserved. He is very well
Yeah,
preserved.
it's all those years of clean living.
That's funny.
So Joseph, do you? I'm sorry. Before we start getting close up, I just have to give a shout out, Lisa Pascarosa. If you're watching, who's a dear friend of the show, our friend Justin Enoch, who had passed away from an overdose in 2019. Today would have been his 30th birthday, and I just wanted to, for Lisa who's out there, we love you. We're thinking about you today. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. So Joseph, do you want to field any of the comments here?
Yeah, well, let's throw this one over to Karen. This is a good one. How do you feel about setting sobriety goals? For instance, I want to be sober on February 4th, my wife and I's dating anniversary. I think Karen, being that you were in recovery and had a slip and then got back into it, like I think this would be a good one for you.
Absolutely. Javier, I love that you're thinking out and you want to plan for, making that anniversary extra special by being sober for it. I think that's awesome. My biggest advice would probably be when I tend to think like, okay, so after New Year's, I'll definitely get sober. Or after this person's birthday party, I'll definitely get sober. Or like, we're going to do something super fun and get really messed up next weekend. So after that, I'm going to get sober. The more I keep putting it off, the further away it gets. So I think my advice would be think about today, think about this moment, and try not to drink today. Maybe today I'll take a break and see how it goes. And then, just try it today.
Get sober today. And then for your anniversary, you can give her a week and a half sober.
That's right. That's right.
I always think about that Jane's Addiction song. Jane says, I'm gonna quit tomorrow. Like it's always tomorrow. Right. And Javier, don't think that we're criticizing you or anything, right? You're here, you're talking, and you're speaking it out into the universe, and that's beautiful, right? But recovery starts with 1 second, and then 1 minute, and then 1 hour, and then 1 day, and start setting those goals first, and if those aren't working, reach out for help. I can't emphasize enough just how great an impact the people that I was around in early recovery had and what they've done for even for my kids, what they did for me, how it contributed to them, right? And it sounds, someone said it here in the comments, Sam said, 1 day at a time sounds so cliche, but it's so true, just 1 day. 1 day.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was working as a tech, this guy would come in, and I think he was flying in from Ohio, and it was like 5 or 6 times he would fly in from Ohio, get to the airport, and then just run away, and just, and it happened so much, and my boss at the time was just like, oh, he keeps on going for that one more. And it just made me think, like, I went for that one more for 9 years. I went to my first meeting, and then it wasn't until 9 years later that I ultimately get clean. And, I'm lucky to be here. So, if you have the opportunity, Javier, to, reach out to somebody local or, hit us up in the private message and, get some help, man. You and your wife are definitely worth it.
Yeah, Javier, wherever you are, I bet you we know somebody there that would be happy to come hang out with you. There's a couple of other really great comments and questions in the chat that I think we should get to. Not that one, Greg. I'm looking a little bit further back. Candice Scruggs said, I'm so glad I came across this conversation, which we're glad you did too. Her question here, though, is, so how do you deal with the situation where your partner of 20 years is a functioning addict / alcoholic? It's so hard. So Karen, you've been on both sides of this.
I have. I've played both roles. Candice, I think the hardest part is, as much as we love them so much, and I'm sure your partner, you love everything about this person, and we want it for them so badly, they have to want it for themselves. And I think that, you can open the communication and talk about it, but until that person is really ready to make the move, they have to want it for themselves and not for you. And that's really tough. Do you guys have anything you want to add that sounds better than that?
No, that sounded great. But I mean, just from my own personal experience, it's like functional is definitely subjective, because I thought I was functional for a long time. And then, I would come across people who would be like, you were nowhere near functional. I was living, on my mom's floor. I was not, a functioning adult, but I thought I had my shit together,
Yeah.
If I could go to the phone room and make a couple bucks, enough to get, what I needed for the next day, I had my shit together.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that that's Candace's situation, but just speaking from personal experience.
One thing that I think about with folks who have it together, right? Because I speak with people pretty regularly who,
He thinks he's functional.
they tick all the boxes, right? They've got the cars, they've got the career, they've got the money, they've got all the stuff, right? But you can have all those things and still just be surviving, right? And so I always think about surviving versus thriving. And am I growing as a person, or am I just stagnant? And also, just I've met people with nothing who were in love with life. I've met people, in sober living with no car, with no job, with no money, with no girlfriend, who love themselves and love life. And I've met people who had all the things, who hated themselves and hated life. And sometimes that's what you can point out to folks who are functioning alcoholics or addicts, right?
There's another element. Oh, sorry, guys.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to touch upon the other element. Candace also talked about having a 13-year-old. So that brings a whole nother dimension into what's happening at home. I think the best thing you can do is open communication with your child. Make sure you're that stable force. Make sure you guys are creating as much stability as possible. And I know for my older son, we've had him see a therapist to deal with things like anxiety, which probably stem from when he was little. So we've definitely created spots where he can kind of channel his own feelings. So 13-year-olds are very aware of the household dynamics, and whatever you can do to create stability for your child is very important. And that's something you do have control over. So just wanted to add
Sam Cox here added to the conversation. I think this fits. When you love someone, it makes it so easy to enable them. It's a slippery slope. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to let them fail and hit their rock bottom before they're ready to get help, which I know my kids have to mess things up a lot on their own before they will allow me to intercede on someone. There's another great comment here I wanted to get back to, the one that Greg had on the screen earlier. Haley said, "This came across my Facebook. I'm so glad I got in here to listen. I really needed it. She's got just over 8 months sober, and her fiance and the father of her 3 children just relapsed and is now in jail. By the grace of God, I was able to stay sober through his relapse, and I'm praying this helps him get back to his recovery. Right now, I'm 100% taking it one day at a time right now. Thanks for having this." And she doesn't have a question, but I just wanted to say, Haley, you rock.
Yeah.
Great job. We can stay sober through anything, right? I don't know what program you work, Haley, but the big book says that we can go anywhere and do anything as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. You are a hero to your children right now. You should be extremely proud of yourself. Good job, Haley.
Here's a good one. Timothy Mann said, "How do I make amends to my mom that's passed away?"
Karen.
Oh, that's a good one. I think that everyone has their own way of doing things. For me, I did a lot of writing. I think a wonderful way to do it is to write out everything that you could think of saying. If she has a gravesite, you can go read it to her. You can have a special spot that you feel comfortable reading it out loud. You could pray on it. Whatever your personal choosing is, you can find a way to make a special moment where you feel like she's hearing you. And the most important thing is for you to get it out of your system, get it off your chest, and know that she is at peace, and you can be at peace with your amends, even if you don't get feedback from her.
Yeah, and the living amends of just being the best version of not even, working to be the best version of yourself, to continually do work on yourself and just try to do things, like a little bit better this time. And, just that little voice that you have in your head, just dedicate that to your mom every time you listen to the good voice and you do something just a little bit extra to make, not to sound cheesy, but the world a better place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to keep in line with our theme of cliches tonight, right, is, all parents really want is to see their kids happy.
Yeah.
So Tim, if this is something that's weighing you down and preventing you from being happy, if this is something that's still bringing you sadness, your mom wants you to figure it out. She wants to see you just as happy. And that's a great way to make amends. Let's see, is there anything else in the chat that we might have missed? Again, it sounds cliche, but just stay sober. Yep. We're all about the cliches today, you guys.
I love a good cliche.
When I first walked into meetings and I heard all of it, I was just like, this bullshit, but then once it applies to you, like, then you're just like, oh, okay, hold on, pain ends. I get it now. Your ego is not your amigo. All these things that I heard in early recovery are like all these things that I live by now.
Yeah.
I like the fear, face everything and rise, and progress, not perfection. I have my little daily ones that I have to keep. My kids are like, I know.
But see, it's because, like, I think some of those, like, super simple little things is because, like, when we're in it, like, when you're upset, emotionally, whatever, like, you're not processing, like, higher function thinking skills, It's like, okay, halt. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Right? That's how we end up with these cliches.
Yeah. It works, though. They work. That's why we continue to use them.
Yeah.
They make it simple. Keep it simple.
There's
another one. Yeah.
We should start selling some bumper stickers on here.
Yeah.
We'll have to make ours original, but we could do it.
Yeah. I'm sure we could come up with one. So, Joseph, do you have any closing thoughts?
I mean, parenting in recovery, go back to, like, what Maggie said earlier, right? Like, parenting and being in recovery is truly a blessing. It's scary and it's hard. But I truly believe that the fact that I'm in recovery and that has impacted how I parent my kids is really setting my kids up to be more successful humans. And I don't mean financially, right? I mean that, they have a greater understanding of things like empathy and vulnerability and honesty and all that because of their exposure to recovery through me and through the people that are in their lives, right? Like, most of their weird uncles and aunts are in recovery, right? And at least the ones on my side, they get it.
Joseph's daughter got to do a commercial with us one time, and it was we got to have her act like it was her birthday, but she was young enough to where we were like, we're just gonna have a mini birthday party for her, and she got she got all these presents, and she remembered me when I came to the house, which was great. Joseph's kids are just amazing. They are.
You gave her presents.
He won the lottery with that one. So one thing I do want to touch before we get closing. So, Maggie was talking about being in recovery is such a gift, but I could imagine what a hurdle is knowing all the excuses and even reasons that you have in early recovery to put off getting help. And I can imagine being a parent is just like when you barely have time to go to the bathroom or take a shower, let alone making recovery the primary goal in your life. What either of you want to chime in on that?
I think it's Karen's turn.
I knew you were going to do that. Yeah, I think you have two choices. It's either, like I talked about earlier, it's either put it first or you lose kind of everything eventually. You just have to make time for it. Whether that be, I've gotten in the habit of, the showing gratitude before your feet touch the ground. Like as soon as I wake up in the morning, I'm grateful for the ceiling. I'm grateful for my warm bed. I'm grateful for outside. Just getting my mindset going right away and making recovery just a part of who I am. It has to happen or everything else falls apart. So it's either I do it or I feel like I lose it. I lose everything.
Are you saying either you use it or you lose it?
Or work it, you're worth it.
Oh, but yeah, that's where
okay.
I was going with that. Yeah, that's where I was going with that. Yep. So on to Joseph's cliches, since I
saw the opening. I had to take it. No, but seriously, let's get Karen's final thoughts. Here's the floor is yours. Say whatever you want.
All the cliches you could fit in 2 minutes.
I will try to pile them all in the last sentence. No, I'm just so honored to be here. Recovery is such a huge part of my life. I want to continue to make it my focus of my life. And I think the best part of being here tonight was watching the comments. I just think sober people don't realize how amazing you all are. Some of the strongest, wisest, most incredible people I know are sober and in the programs that are offered, and just don't give up. And especially those who are parents, do it for yourselves, do it for your kids, but whatever it is, just don't give up on it because it's so worth it. And thanks, guys, for having me. I'd love to come back sometime if you're willing to cliche it up with me again.
Absolutely. This will be great. But I would like to say, I know Candace has been chiming in a lot tonight. So Candace, reach out to Maggie if you haven't already. And, if you're in South Florida, there's so much support out in South Florida that you could find. And we really hope that, you guys get the help that you need. So Joseph, have you worked on a closer yet? I know last week we were trying to come up with a couple.
Does he have any fade out music or anything that I need?
We just gotta say keep coming back.
Oh
no, is that too? Didn't try hard enough on that one.
Nope.
Well, I will paraphrase Joseph Gerardo for our closing. As the wise Joseph Gerardo once says, there's a million ways, or 1,000. There's 1,000 ways in and 1,000 ways out. So find that one way out. Thank you. Oh, yes. Good night,
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
No. Good night.